to intro this, it's going to be a series of 12 videos where we have these Zoom conversations to discuss chapters of a book. We are all reading the same book, which is Jordan Peterson's new book, which we don't have a cover on, but this is what it looks like.
They have.
Oh, Seamus and Esther have got it.
Yay!
So it's his newly released book, Beyond Order. There's 12 rules for life, which are a companion to his original 12 rules for life. And basically we wanted to read them together and discuss them together as a family. Is everyone on board?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So this is a little like the Whaley version of Oprah Book Club.
Yes.
Much like that. And if you look under your seats,
Thanks, Oprah.
you get a new car. You get
You got a promo code for this book?
yeah, use Whaley at checkout and we'll get 10% off, maybe.
Try that.
So that's the basic concept. And we've all agreed to do it. What I'm interested in before we start is why. Shay and S, I want to ask you, why do you think we were going to bother doing this?
Esther.
Because this book is useful for life.
Okay.
That's my answer.
Why bother doing it together as a family?
I think the first book was pretty impactful. And I think the merit of doing it together is you probably can suck a little bit more out of the marrow. And also in family, I guess you're talking to people who you're very comfortable with and they know you very well. So, unpack some family issues.
Yeah. Also, it's iron sharpening iron.
You've only got 12 episodes.
We don't
yeah?
have enough time.
You're waiting for what?
You've only got 12 episodes. You want to unpack family issues, you're going to have me
We'll have a bonus episode at the end.
On forever.
What's funny about your answer is actually ties into the first rule, which is what we're discussing tonight. Does everyone know what the first rule is, word for word? Charlotte asked me earlier and I struggled to remember it.
I do know the title.
Go for it.
Do not
Don't.
You
Oh,
go
sorry.
first.
No.
Like quiz.
Go for it.
Read it.
Do not carelessly denigrate social institutions or creative achievements.
Yeah, or social institutions, either or. So a family is a social institution. So like you say, iron sharpens iron. As JP says, outsource your mental health, right?
Yeah.
So that's essentially what we're doing. Before we read the first rule, we decided we're going to do it. So I thought that was quite interesting. Does everyone understand that title? Like Keith and Nikki, do you, those words like denigrate, social institutions, were you familiar with that sort of stuff before you read the chapter?
I understood the words, but I didn't know where he would go with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nikki,
Yeah.
you're an English buff. Denigrate, do you know what that means?
Yes. Belittle.
Yeah.
To erode.
Put down.
Put down.
I did a little bit of prep because I'm a geek. OED says criticize unfairly or disparage. That's what denigrate means.
That's not good.
And then the important word there, carelessly criticize unfairly, carelessly disparage. And then a social institution, I actually had to do research on because I wasn't 100% sure on what that even meant. Yeah. And you're all on the same page, you know what it means, right?
Tell us. Put it out there for those
Right. So there isn't actually a definitive definition for the term. It's used in different areas in different ways. So I've got a couple of definitions here. One is a group of people that takes on roles for a common purpose. And the other one is a social institution is an interrelated system of social roles and social norms organized around the satisfaction of an important social need or social function. They are organized patterns of beliefs and behavior that are centered on basic social needs.
Sounds right.
So
Give us an example of some social.
well, that's my first question is what social institutions are we actually involved in? As a family, I was thinking this is all good to not socially not denigrate or carelessly denigrate social institutions, but what ones would we even denigrate? So I went through and I've got a list of stuff that I think we do as a family, and family being the first one. I think that is a social institution.
Yeah.
If you read that definition of a group of people that is going towards a common goal.
Sammy's crying.
Sorry, Nikki?
Sammy's crying.
Oh, Buns is on her way to sort it out.
Welcome to family.
Sorry.
He's playing the role of a baby. What a baby.
Annoying.
The one that disrupts the entire institution.
I think the first institution is marriage.
Yes, I was going to say that.
Okay, let's start at marriage then. So how does that fit into that definition?
Well, lots of people will criticize marriage. They'll say it's just an archaic religious institution, that we should just be free and we shouldn't be restricted. But along the lines of where Jordan is going is that, okay, it's all well and good to try and just get rid of it, but then what do you replace it with? And is it better?
Yeah.
And
In what ways is marriage a social institution? Like in terms of those definitions, what makes it a social institution?
In terms of a group going towards a common cause?
So it's a group of two with a common purpose. So your definition of marriage would say that marriage is that group of two having a common aim.
Yes, definitely a big part of it.
Or you
Nice.
get divorced.
Yeah, or it doesn't work.
Yeah. Did you guys all set up a common aim before you got married?
Yes.
Sex.
Nice.
No, for sure we set up a common aim. Otherwise we wouldn't have even started the thing to begin with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So sorry, what was the common goal again?
Sex.
No,
Oh no, sorry. What was it?
it's a cheeky bonus. No, the common aim for us was definitely part of it was we shared a common faith and we had a common idea of where we were headed. Now we didn't know all the details, but for us within marriage, there was definitely a faith aspect to that. So we were sharing a belief system and aiming at the goal of traveling together with that belief system as our compass.
That to me doesn't sound like an aim at all. It sounds like you had a way to move, but you didn't know where you were moving to.
Well, we don't know exactly where we're moving to.
We were moving towards one another. That's where we were moving.
How's that worked out?
Keep it.
And I didn't want to move away, so there was a thing that we had to do.
But we were moving also towards family, creating a
Yeah, but-
social unit, like
That
a
sounds like an aim.
microcosm of culture, of
Yeah.
not culture, of society.
Social institution.
Yeah.
Faith sounds to me like a methodology, whereas a family sounds like an aim and a goal.
But a family a family may or may not happen. There's no guarantees. So the basis for us was a common faith and value system.
Yeah.
Where we started.
I think that links into another social institution, which in some way or another we're all involved in, which is church.
Hmm.
You're involved in church by proxy. And then other ones I thought of, so a family as a whole, like what we're doing right now, that's a social institution. Church, work, we all work together as well. Government, and then any group that has a common aim. So those are the ones I thought of initially that we were all involved in quite heavily. And those are all ones that are quite often attacked, like Esther was saying. I think you'd all agree, right?
Yeah.
So
And then friendship and intimate relationship.
friendships and intimate relationships. So yeah, I think when he starts out, he's essentially laying a groundwork for that, which is to set up what a social institution is. And he talks about what's the chapter, the section of that chapter is called, and I can't remember, but it's an isolated client basically
Oh yeah,
that
the
loses
first
his
one.
partner.
I like that. But
Yeah.
That's my favorite bit.
So I think that's what really ties into your iron sharpens iron. The guy had completely secluded himself from the world.
Mhm.
And so Jordan Peterson is counseling him, giving advice, and it's basically getting him reintegrated.
Mm.
And the takeaway there is that he learns the ropes and joined the world. That's how he
Yeah.
puts it, which I quite like. Which made me think about Sean. Sean is integrated in the family and in the business, but friendship, when I think of friendship, I think of Sean sitting all by himself in his house, secluded from the world. And this is more of an intervention than a discussion, really, I would say.
Getting you help.
I think he's very casually denigrated the social institution of friendship. Thoughts?
What do you think about that, Sean?
Defend yourself.
He's his friend.
Very long setup just to say I have no friends.
Do you ever think of that though? Because I did genuinely think there's a few people I thought of as I read the chapter. And when I read about this guy not having friendships and not outsourcing his mental health, I did think of you.
If you're talking about outsourcing mental health, we as a family talk all the time.
Yeah.
On an individual level, two of us or a group of us. And I have very good self-talk, I would say, although that's not outsourcing. But in terms of friends, there isn't a lot of opportunity for friends in our situation. But I have great friends across the world. They're just not in my day-to-day life. Like 2 or 3 phenomenal friends.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that serves a great purpose. Not sure if it ties in exactly with this idea of outsourcing your sanity, right? Because they're not those. He talks about it like you're bumping up against things, you're having to speak things out, you're having to formulate ideas, and they're constantly challenged. But I think you're right in saying that you get that through family on a daily basis.
Yeah, I don't feel like I'm at some sort of disadvantage.
Yeah.
And it's not like I'm trying to avoid people or avoid friends. It's just, that's just not a thing for me.
Not too dangerous yet, because he said if you like check the list, if you take 3 of the boxes, you're dangerous.
I'm some psycho.
Yeah, Sean, no friends. Take what other lists, Jada?
What Charlotte's referencing is whenever Jordan Peterson gets a new client in, he asks them this list of questions, and if 3 or more aren't in place, he says there's a huge risk of them downward spiraling in their psychology. And this is the list for anyone that's listening. It's quite interesting. Are they educated to a level of ability and ambition that fulfills them, right? Do they have free time, and is it engaging, meaningful, and productive? Have they formulated solid plans for the future? Are they free of serious health and economic problems? Do they have friends and a social life? Sean. Are they in a stable and satisfying partnership, like a relationship? Do they have a close, functional family relationship? And do they have a job that's stable with cash and it's satisfying? And if 3 or more of those aren't in place, there's a huge risk of them spiraling down, which I thought was really interesting. So that's kind of his litmus test in the clinic, to go through those questions first.
I remember, because we listened to the audiobook, we weren't reading it. I remember thinking, I must go back and read that and write those down. In your opinion, how many of those boxes do I check before I'm mentally admitted?
Let's think about it. Well, I'd say you got 2 degrees, which is well beyond your
Waiting. It's not a real university.
and ability. So that's a double tick. Is your free time engaging, meaningful, and productive? I would say no.
Agreed.
I'd say you escape and you play kind of mindless games.
Poor Sean.
Have you formulated solid plans for the future? Yeah, I would say so.
I think half tick, because Sean is always about opportunity and creating things. So you like to embrace the idea of uncertainty.
So loose plans rather than solid.
Yeah.
I'd say with Sammy, he's got solid plans. Free of serious health and economic problems. You need to lose some weight, but you're rich.
What?
Do you not know you need to lose some weight?
Oh, you don't know you're rich?
No, he's saying he's rich.
Friends in a social life, that's a massive X. Stable and satisfying partnership. Bonds, you can answer that one.
Are you stable?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say yes. And a close functional family relationship, yes. Have you got a job that's good for money, like financially stable and satisfying? I'm not sure about stable. I'm not sure about satisfying. And I'm not sure about money. So what do you think about that one?
I'm almost never satisfied, but that's because that's my temperament. I always want to go bigger, and the second I get to bigger, I'm already bored. But that's just because I am a fruitcake slightly. So I don't think even if I fulfill my wildest dreams, I would ever fulfill my wildest dreams. So yeah, a bit of a weird question.
Because you love the pursuit. That's
I love the impossibility of a task.
Mm.
So it never ends.
Yeah.
I guess I think the only real one that would be unchecked, and you could argue it several different ways, for me would be a friend group. But that's not because I'm not opposed to friends, I'm not able to make friends, or so unsharpened that I couldn't make friends. It's just the predicament we're in Hong Kong. It's not a rife with people of the same mindset, which I'm sure everyone here has felt, right? I don't think all of us have like a huge friend group.
Not in this country, no.
I always have had, but not here.
I mean, it's not that we don't have friends here. It's just not. It's not like you have options to have this friend group and that friend group. I think we're all, and that's just the nature of foreigners. Any foreigner in any country.
Seamus has always been the most social one. Have you got friends here, Shay?
He does.
I'd say I do.
Who are they?
Well, one was a neighbor. Is a neighbor. I'm hanging out with him tomorrow night, so that's valid.
Nice.
And the other one's leaving the country. We've got a promotion, and off he goes to Singapore.
Who are you hanging out with tomorrow night?
These are the guys I hang out with.
You just lost
No idea about
half your friends.
Wilfred.
Shame. Oh.
Real friends, Seamus, that are actually people, not imaginary.
Seamus definitely has more friends than me.
Surprising to only hear you have two, to be honest.
I would agree with the sentiment that it's much more difficult making friends here in Hong Kong. Because the lifestyle is different. People work longer hours. People are, it's not really like in England, you'd hang out with people after work and stuff like that. But here it's different, and then you are a foreigner, so there is a lot of divide in terms of culture and values.
Not just that, we actually purposefully avoided even groups of our own. Like we've actually kind of avoided expat groups generally.
But that's a different vision and mindset. It's people that we don't really.
But it's not like we've gone out of our way to like go and find friends. Like we can't just blame it on, there's no one around, or it's not that simple.
It's not been a high priority.
No.
But when you read that part, did you ask yourself those questions? Like the first thing I did was check off which ones have I got in place and which ones haven't I?
The one that I would say about myself is I don't feel like I've been educated to the point that I should be.
That was me too.
That made me think I really need to get down and get my doctorate.
No, but I seriously didn't really think that. I'm only just discovering what I want.
Call me the thermometer. I got 2 degrees, baby.
Actually, I got 2 degrees too.
Sorry?
You answer those questions.
I actually have a really big friend group in Hong Kong, so it's funny hearing you guys talk about it. I think I might be the most reclusive out of the 3 boys, and I've got the most friends, funnily enough. Do I have solid plans? No. Is my free time engaging, meaningful, and productive? I mean, Fortnite is a really important game. I would say Charlotte and I play chess in our free time. We do jiu-jitsu. We've just started doing that. Basically, all of us are doing jiu-jitsu now, apart from Nikki and Keith. educated to a level of ability and ambition. No, I don't think I'm educated to my level of ability. Stable, satisfying partnership, yes. Solid, functional family relationship, yes. Job that's good for cash, stable and satisfying, yes. I really like tuition. I think it's a really satisfying, stable and high-paying job for
What it
my
is.
education level.
It is.
Yeah, I felt safe with those three. Yeah.
Okay, and now you answer those questions.
Yes, tick all the boxes.
Really?
Except I don't have a friend group because time and the fact that we're such a close family,
Yeah.
basically, you don't really need friends and you don't really have time for them. Well, I don't. And I quite like being on my own anyway, but it's not that I can't enjoy it.
Dad, we like you being on your own too.
I understand. Yeah. And I love my job and I love things I do outside of work, fixing stuff and making stuff and boating, and I love all of that. So yeah, I think I have quite a good time outside of working, but I enjoy working, so it doesn't even feel like work most of the time.
That's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
So that was one of the first things I picked up on in the first chapter. I thought that was really interesting. He talks about Jung and Freud and all their anima and id and superego, which I find really interesting. I did a bit of psychology, so I love that stuff. But then he essentially says they focus too much on the individual and
Yeah.
not enough on the collective, which is why we're talking about all this friendship stuff. So I thought that was really interesting. It made it a little bit dense to read, I thought. I'm not sure if you guys found it the same,
Little dense.
right?
No, no, it was fine.
Because he goes from that into evolutionary stuff, into
So
the psychology of like pointing and everything, which I'm going to ask Sean and Buns about in a bit. And why don't we talk about that? So it goes from there, outsourcing your sanity, into pointing at what is meaningful. And he talks about his granddaughter, Michaela's daughter, and that made me think of Sammy the whole time. So I wondered if Sean and Buns wanted to talk about that a bit.
Yeah, we noticed recently Sammy started to point at things, and Jordan was saying about how a kid will point at something to get your attention or to communicate something, but then they pick up very quickly if you're not engaging in that they have to learn other ways to engage and communicate. I think
Or point at something more meaningful.
Yeah, and we've seen that with Sammy. He will point at something and make a sound, and if we don't engage, then he will just keep going and finding other objects to communicate. Yeah.
I thought that was quite clever in the sense that with Freud and Jung, it was all about kind of being integrated in your own self. But actually, in the real world, we find out what's important from the outside, not from the inside.
Mm.
And using the pointing thing was we get a reaction from those around us about what is important and what isn't important.
Mm.
And that brings sanity and also social awareness and how to interact with people on things that are interesting to them. And if they're not interested, you won't get a reaction. So as a child, you learn to find things that are interesting to other people. It puts you outside of yourself, makes you more integrated socially, so that you can have a friend group, which I believe some people have.
Yeah. I thought that whole how society creates your sanity essentially is very fascinating. And then how, if a child is then deprived of that social interaction, you actually create brain damage. So it's just so essential. And it's very fun. It definitely reminded me of Sammy because it's very fun watching that actually play out in real time. How real that is. He'll point and then you go there or you don't go there. And then it has this knock-on effect. Then you're teaching him language. Then you're it's absolutely fundamental to development. It's very, very interesting.
Something that made me think during that, obviously the connection with Sammy, but then I'm talking to people all the day, like all day, every day. That's part of the reason I don't have friends, is because I'm all peopled out. But I noticed with some people, it's like they haven't developed that part of their socializing. And so they don't notice the signs when it's just not interesting or you don't care. Even if it's an interesting topic, if someone else isn't interested, why are you still talking? And so they don't pick that up, or they go on long rants like I'm doing right now on one particular line, and you feel, well, I feel trapped because I don't have the skills to get out of that thing, because I give people attention, I give them focus, because we were taught that's what you do, you're respectful. And then they don't pick up on the social cues. And because a lot of people just ignore them because they just label those people, they're uninteresting, they're boring, or they focus on one particular thing. Then when someone finally does give them something, they just like hone in and you can't get away.
Yeah. And
that's why I found the pointing thing so interesting, because I can see in 50, 60-year-olds sometimes that what you said, Esther, they're brain damaged. They haven't, well, maybe not damaged, but they haven't developed. They're undeveloped in that area.
Or no one's told them.
And I think there's a huge key to just being fulfilled and being successful in life and being accepted socially. That EQ is developed at that age.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we'll walk around a street, pick a street in any place in the world, and someone will say, Seamus, and he knows somebody there and they're best friends and they get on like a house on fire anywhere in the world. And that's high EQ. But other people you can see daily and you just want to avoid and ignore because they just haven't developed. They're probably lovely people, probably brilliant in particular areas, but they haven't developed that EQ element. And I found that very interesting. And that made me focus on, we're going to make sure that our kid, for whatever our responsibility is developed in that particular arena. And I think specifically, not to go on for too long and do the exact thing that I'm preaching not to do, specifically in the COVID time, I think there's going to be a lot of kids growing up who haven't been socialized properly. Because for those key, I don't know how long it is. Is it 6 months? Is it 2 years? I don't know. They haven't had that social interaction, and it potentially could be a downfall.
Mm-hmm. I heard Sean today trying to get that point across to Judah, which is always an interesting thing. We try all day, every day, and it just doesn't come across. Judah, do you realize that I'm not looking at you while you're talking to me? And Judah doesn't care. He just keeps going. I mean, we do this all the time. Do you realize, Judah, that when you're talking, I have to look at you, and then I have to be engaged with what you're doing. And I mean, it's like, this is our daily, yeah. So just talking about someone that this is a constant thing that we have to go through. And I'm not totally convinced that it will, I don't know if he'll ever grow out of that, to be honest.
I think he's got better over the time. I think and what's been a huge factor is we're in an environment where other kids are starting to teach Judah at a certain age. That's and they're saying that they're much more straight, and they walk away and they don't give him the time of day. And he's starting to realize, ooh, I need to speak quicker. So today he had a presentation to make, and he had an invention to deliver. He did 3 inventions of his own imagination within a minute and was the best presenter there.
Yeah.
And it's simply because he refined and he wrote down and he was able to pinpoint what to say. So he has the ability, but he just, it's interesting because he wants to talk about some things. It's just knowing if someone's engaged or not. And that's a difficult thing for some kids, but you're right. It has to be developed, or if you get to a certain age and that hasn't been developed, everyone wants to ignore you and move, they don't give you the time of day. And it's a horrible thing, but it's what we all do. We all, want to avoid that person.
This comes down to the Jordan Peterson playing the game theme, which is very strong with him. And we literally have to say to him, listen, if you don't learn to play these games as in an actual game or a social game, you will not be invited to play. Nobody wants to play with you. And it's a really like harsh thing to have to spell out, because most kids will kind of pick that up. And he, and he struggles with that. But you have to spell it out that if you don't learn to play this game properly, you will not know how to play the next game properly, and the next game, and the bigger game.
Yeah.
And you just hope that it starts to go in. But it's practice. Like today I took the boys to the park and we played the same game that we played on Sunday that he just melted down about. And you hope that just slowly with practice and implementation, it starts to go in, that this is, that how to play a game and how to socially like become integrated and to be a good player that people want to play with and want to interact with.
Yeah.
So that first chapter, he talks about Piaget, and it's not about winning the game.
Yes.
It's about being invited back to play again.
That's right.
Yeah, the rats, right?
Yeah.
That's very interesting. I love that bit. It's very good.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's great.
Yeah.
That's good. That's a lot.
I think I can say something.
Yes,
You
please.
talk about having a friendship base, and you talk about your institution of family. Just stepping back from all of this conversation, what I think is really important is to have the security of a group of members, be it your family, because some people don't have what we have. We're very blessed. Some people have been raised with terrible families, and they have to have a group of friends.
Yes.
But what I think is the most integral part of the whole thing of any group institution working is honesty. That's like the fundamental, where you can say to that person, you're talking too much.
Yeah.
You need to stop now. Or don't do this. Or, what he was talking about with social things.
Yeah.
Iron sharpening iron. I haven't heard anyone mentioning honesty. To be honest, to be able to feel secure enough to go to that person and say, don't do that. This doesn't look good.
Did Peterson talk about that?
Not that I remember, no.
I think he talked more about the individual opening themselves up to that, right? So there's humility and there's gratitude. And that humility is being the ability to be teachable.
Yes.
The ability to see yourself. It says over here, humility, it is better to presume ignorance and invite learning than to assume sufficient knowledge and risk the consequent blindness. So that's powerful, because that's where a lot of people go, is especially single children. They don't have that sibling, iron sharpens iron. So they don't invite teaching. They will play a game, and if they win, they'll play it again. But if they lose, they don't want to play it again because they're not used to being teachable.
Yeah.
Seamus, that's the complete opposite of what you used to do. You used to play a game. The second you won, you wouldn't play ever again.
This was the last game, Sean.
You would have been proud of Jay on this one. He did what Ryder did last time and hit at the closest point and got straight to the base before anyone else. I was like, wow, you learned something. That's good.
Strategy.
Yeah, and that's a first, like for him. That's really good. That's good.
That's where that turning point is, right? Where we're all talking about the pros of the social institutions, but that bitterness is where the denigration, the careless denigration of those institutions comes in.
Yeah.
Like, so all of these things that we're talking about are attacked by a lot of people. Like you were talking about marriage at the beginning. It's one of the most attacked institutions there is.
Yeah.
Church as well.
Yeah.
Like that's a group of people that are playing a role towards a common goal that is constantly taken to shreds, right? Would you agree?
Yes.
I love the part where he talked about you're going to get rid of thousands of years worth of well thought out ideas and institutions and replace it with what?
Yeah.
Good luck.
Good luck with that.
I love that because it's so like, it's poignant.
So true.
It's so true. Many
He
people
says
go,
it so honestly and brutally in that section as well. He's talking about a specific person, right? And her room's a mess, her life's a mess. She doesn't have friendships. And then she gets on to talking about ecology or something like that and has a go that everyone's doomed. The world is suffering and humans are to blame. And she has no solution for it, just hatred and bitterness.
And she's very young as well and inexperienced.
Yeah.
So it's like, but talking about truth, Mom said, like, shouldn't this all be based on honesty and truth? The precursor to this book is very much emphasizing tell the truth. And that rolling into, you need a significant relationship in which you always tell the truth, right? So it's like, it almost, I think there's kind of a you're covering it, you ding dong. There's almost like a presupposition that you're already, that you have, you know, in a healthy person, you have a significant relationship in which you always tell the truth. And that obviously knocks on to family and children, that in a secure and functional relationship, you can tell each other the truth because it's secure, and you know, you're able to do
It
that.
actually starts with a child and its mother.
Yes.
If you can't tell mummy the truth for everything,
Yes,
you're not going to tell the truth when you're older.
it's true. Yep, you're right.
Do we still have to tell you the truth, Mummy?
Gross.
You got mommy issue.
When they grow up in security, being able to go to mummy all the time with whatever,
Yeah.
that becomes like something that, you know, a culture in themselves.
And like Sean said, those people that you just want to get away from, those are people that have actually never been told the truth, or at least not consistently. And because those people often can't receive it. You tell them something, they're like very offended and hurt often.
Yeah.
Because no one's told them the truth. And it's tragic. You know, that's such a tragic state for an adult to be in. And so like when we think about like Judah, we think of that. We're like, he at least needs to have been told that consistently so that he can at least take it. Even though we think obviously people develop, but you need to be able to take that criticism, and you need to have been given it from the people that you can trust the most.
That he knows that love him.
That will never change. Yeah.
And it's a kindness, because if you can't hear the truth from your family along your life somewhere, someone's going to say it.
Oh yeah.
It's not going to come from a place of love.
I don't think so.
So, sorry?
I don't think people will say it. I think what they'll do is they just won't invite you back to the next game.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
That's most
Yeah.
often.
in my mind, that is in some sense the social hierarchy speaking to you, and it's speaking truth. We don't want you at our birthday party, and so they don't invite you. But people somehow just miss that. Oh, I'm not invited, and they don't see. Oh, this actually, I'm not invited for a reason.
Yes.
Do you know, my mum, she used to say to us, because there was 4 of us, and they ruled us with a rod of iron. I mean, they really did. We were very well respected, respectful children. And we watched our P's and Q's, and she raised us right. And when we got a bit older, we said to my mum and dad, why were you, quite harsh with us? You were quite strict, very loving, all the rest of it, but strict. And I used to say to them, why were you like that? And she said, I never wanted to be the woman in my group of friends where they'd all be having a party and they'd say, don't invite them because they're kids.
Yeah.
She said, I always wanted to be accepted with my children. And she said, you'll watch when you get married and you have your children and you have your friends over with their kids, there's certain people you'll stop inviting because of their children.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And she says, make sure your children are well behaved.
Yeah. That's another Jordan Peterson point. Don't let your children do things that you hate or that makes you hate them. It's a very, it's exactly that.
Yeah.
Jaden stressed me up all the time. Talk too much, shut up. And then you would just pick that up and shut up. John is not interested, shut up.
It's a good thing to point out though, because you want, like in Charlotte's case, I want the best for her. I want her to be invited to all the things. So I think we talk about a lot is knowing your audience, looking at who's paying attention, and are there little tells in their face that they're not interested in this thing anymore.
Yes.
It's not because I hate Charlotte's stories, because I want
Sometimes you just scoop down.
It's because I want the best for her, and I want her to have meaningful relationships and honesty and people to be able to tell her those things as well.
So how do you feel when Jen does that to you?
I don't feel offended. I think he is helping me because I wasn't acknowledged that you zoomed out. But as soon as he picked up, then he would tell me, oh, he's not listening. You can stop now.
Are you talking specifically about me?
Yes, like that, like 2 days ago.
Yeah, this is when you have to pick us up again for sure.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
I was trying to tell him a book that I was reading, that the part
You
I
don't
find
need to
it
tell everyone the story.
interesting. There we go. Pick that up.
Yeah, I consider that one of my strengths is to watch and listen and read an audience. I feel like that's one of the few things I'm really good at. So if that's something I see a deficit in Charlotte, we're a team, right? So I want her to do better. I'm gonna help her out with that because that's something she's not the best at yet. Whereas if we need to have a conversation with someone, she can take the lead because that's not my strong suit. I like to sit back and listen. So I see that as, that's our team. That's what we're moving towards. That's our aim. Be better.
I think you picking up something that I think a lot of relationships suffer with, because often the partner doesn't want to speak truth. And there's an avoidance of saying exactly what needs to be said in the fake guise of being kind.
Yeah.
And this kindness, this politically correctness kills the honesty.
Yeah.
And what it happens is, it's like, where you parenting, you literally hate your kids because they're doing things that make, are wrong, but you're trying to be kind. And then your marriage, your partners is just doing something. We had a couple of years ago, and this woman would just talk all the time. And one day I said, hey, this is happening, because we knew them quite well. And when she found out, she was heartbroken. And I broke it to her gently, as kindly as I could. And she turned to her husband and said, do I do this? And the husband said, yes, you do. And her first reaction was, well, why didn't you tell me?
Yeah.
And she was completely undone
So
and
hurtful.
exposed. And it was heartbreaking because she never knew that she did it. And he did, but didn't say anything about it. So
didn't want to
so
be
rather take the brunt of offense, but do it in kindness, in real kindness, than be quiet and pretend like you're kind.
Yeah.
Write that down.
It's hard to see it. Yeah.
Where do you draw the line between, because we're talking just socially, obviously family included, where do you draw the line where you speak truth and where, not that you lie, but you don't tackle an issue by speaking truth?
I've got an example of that we dealt with recently with a client we had. And the reason I drew the line to not tackle it and not speak truth was age. To me, the client seemed like beyond the point of no return. When someone gets old enough, it's hard to teach them a new trick. And if they're at enough of a distance, I think that it's not worth the invested time to change this person. I haven't got enough leverage to change this person. So for me, it would be leverage, how close I am to them, and age. That would be my answer.
To our resident golden oldies, what do you think about that?
He's talking about you, by the way. The clients.
That's what I was thinking the whole time. We're talking about mom and dad.
Yeah, I think age people do settle and become more concrete in who they are and values, but it doesn't mean they can't change, especially if it's important. You know what I mean? I think of people I know that they just have to adjust a little thing, like be more like you, Jaden, where they understand this is boring the person. I remember speaking to a lady, and I think mum had hurt her knee or something, and then, she wouldn't talk about mum's knee. It was about all of the broken bones she'd ever had. And yeah, she's never had an intimate enough relationship or people that care enough to say, just shut up and listen. Ask about somebody else, not just yourself. Yeah. Now, this is a woman that lives on her own, so she's got no one to talk to. So it's all bottled up. And as soon as someone says something, she just takes that opportunity to talk about all the things that are inside of her. But that is not playing. She's not invited to the game. you've got to reciprocate. You've got to at least take an interest before you start ranting off about your own thing.
But do you think older people have a harder time changing or choose not to change as much?
I think you become more settled in your, I don't know, values and belief system and who you are. And the older you get, the less you care about what people think about you.
Yeah.
I agree with Dad. I think it's more that you've settled with what you feel comfortable with. You get to know who you are. And you're not about impressing anybody anymore. You're not trying to win anyone anymore. You are who you are. And so your attitude is, this is it. And I'm not going to flip and flop all over the place to try and people please. Well, that's definitely my thing. I don't try and people please. I am who I am, and I'm very, very content in that. I like me. And I'm not going to go and change for other people. There will still be things I do wrong, and there's still things I can do better. And I think we need to be flexible enough, it doesn't matter how old we get, to implement those changes when they come across and they need to change. But our fundamentals, I think we get to a place where you just get comfortable. And so, yes, Sean, to answer your question, you do choose not to change. Yeah. It's not that you can't, it's that you choose.
You've done your changing, but if there's I don't like changing who I am, but I want to learn the whole time. You know what I mean?
Dad, you're recording this on a laptop that is old, and we bought you a brand new one, and you don't
New one's rubbish.
arrange the old one that's broken.
Oh, this battery doesn't last at all on this one.
I use a new one. I put all the software on. So then a follow-up question, specific to you, Mom. You're saying, okay, well, I like me. What happens if other people don't like you and they don't want to invite you to the game that they're playing?
I probably wouldn't want to go to that game because I think you get very happy with the people that are like-minded. And there are people that have invited me to things and I thought, hell no, I don't want to go and play with you. I'd rather watch paint dry because you just don't want to be in those circles. They're just not your kind of people. And so, yeah, if you're not invited to the game, it's probably because you wouldn't want to go there anyway. And so you have peace with that.
Because we're talking about people that are completely socially adjusted already, have high emotional intelligence, and just very good friends. So we can pick and choose. Everyone wants us to come. We just choose not to go.
I don't think that's true.
No, I'm being facetious.
Well, don't be.
For me, it's a very difficult question to answer because you come to that point in any relationship where you think, should I tackle this or not? Because whenever you get close enough to somebody, you see their weaknesses. So in marriage, it was a very easy decision. I got to live with this, and either we tackle this or we just play avoidance for the rest of our lives. So it's just like in the first book, pick up or wait. And that was marriage. Just pick up, push the immovable rock and just keep going because you have to put something in. Or it's just going to create patterns that are not helpful. But then there's some relationships where I look at, like Jaden, you said you got a client, and there's some relationships where I go, I don't want to go further in this relationship. I don't want to have to tackle, and I don't want to have to take on the burden because I don't know. Maybe it's a weakness. I should tackle it, but I just don't see the benefit for them or for me trying to tackle things.
I think there's a hierarchy of burdens. There are more important burdens than that one.
Yes.
And that one's, there's less fruit to be had from tackling it. So why not invest your time more wisely?
Yeah. And that kind of falls back to what he's talking about his granddaughter. When you're pointing at something, how do you know it's important? And it's where there's a resonance, there's a reaction. And it's like, what do you find important? What are people around talking about? That's where you get your influence and your direction from. And so, there's definitely some things I just avoid because I think I don't want to get involved with it.
Yeah.
I remember years ago in England, Mom would just walk down the shop, and she would tackle any parent that would be not parenting correctly. And she would say, "Oh, you just taught your daughter how to manipulate men." And I'd never do that because I don't want to tackle that. But mom's sort of a different cloth. She would just go in, and because she cares about the person, and she's saying the right things with the right heart and the right attitude, but she's picking up things I would never pick up. Right?
We would even run to other aisles and try hide.
I'm like, yeah, you guys got the bad kids, you keep them. I'm going to do my job to try and keep my kids from going rotten. But it's a hard question
You
to
don't
answer.
think that sometimes we had this conversation in the kitchen the other day, do you remember, about being a watchman?
Are you talking to me?
All of you.
James, you weren't invited to that convo. It was a private one.
Sean was saying the other day that
Oh, I was there. Yeah, that's right.
just to leave things, just to not tackle things, not say things. I do that when I feel led to do that.
Okay.
But when I broach things with people, it's never for me. It's for them. And somebody, like Sean said, you know, they've other people have told them, but they've just never heard it. So why are you picking that up? Why are you doing it? But I've seen the fruit, a lot of fruit of me saying something to somebody. They've hated it, but they've heard it, and they've gone away and they've made change, and it's been. It has been fruitful, and it's not for me. And I don't believe that I'm doing it out of my own. I have to deal with that. It's not about what I have to deal about. It's about them. It's always about them. And I get it. There are some situations I look at and I think I wouldn't touch that with a barge pole. But there are other things I look at and I think I feel absolutely provoked in my heart. I have to go and say something.
You get away with it more than most.
You get away with things that I'm surprised. Someone's going to take your head off and somehow you get a magic result. I'm like, how did that work?
Yeah.
I think there's the notion of the student trying to change the world there. Nikki's not some young person with no momentum behind her. She's actually raised kids and they're doing well, and she's got a successful marriage. So when she speaks into someone's life, it's not just some kid telling you what to do. I think there's a lot of strength in that.
Yeah, but other people don't know that when mom walks up to them and says, "Hey, you're raising a tyrant."
Teaching your daughter how to manipulate men.
Do you know, I've only ever done that particular thing in the street once.
It stuck.
I would pay a lot of money to see that man's face.
I only ever did that once. And I mean, let's be honest, in England, every kid's screaming in the aisles. I only ever did it once, and I felt absolutely compelled to go to that man and say, "You have just taught your daughter to manipulate. Well done, her poor husband." And he just looked at me. And I think it went in. He went, "Oh, wow." It was just the right word at the right moment. He wasn't offended or hurt or upset or angry or anything. It was like, boom, for him.
And it comes down to fruit, doesn't it? Like the fruit of your life and the fruit of the results of your input.
Sorry, yes?
Like it comes down to fruit at the end of the day. The fruit of where you've had input, what the result was, and also the fruit of your relationships with other people.
Yeah.
As to whether or not what some people might see as meddling or truth or whatever, whether it's a good thing or not.
I'm not sure. What do you have to say about this?
Yes.
He's not picking up that burden.
Not tackling this.
So Jaden, we're talking a lot about individuals and speaking truth maybe to individuals. How does this relate to the hierarchy, the whole, because we're talking about don't carelessly denigrate social, what was it, social institutions?
Yeah.
How does this relate to social institutions? Because we're very micro at the moment.
See what you're doing there, Sean, trying to get me to bring it out to the macro. I'm lost in the weeds. I'm in the micro. My head's there. How does it relate to? Well, I guess it relates in the sense that we're talking about how these actual institutions work. We're talking about societies, and Nikki speaking out. Like, is that in the social contract that she should be allowed to say that to that guy? I think it is in that hierarchy of community as a social institution. I think if we were to zoom out and talk about other examples of that, one main thing I wanted to bring up was our motto as a business, which, if we'll remember, is screw the system. And then there's a second half to that as well, right?
Serve the people.
Serve the people. So when I thought of it earlier, I didn't remember the second part of our motto. I just remembered screw the system. I think that's the part I came up with, and you guys said serve the people.
Make it lighter.
Because we were going over the etymology of the words and what is it, and then it went off in my head. Screw the system. Are we doing that carelessly? Where is it justified to screw the system? Where is it justified to get rid of these social institutions or reform them or change them? Should we abolish the police, defund the police? Like, are we not in a way going against the society that we live in currently?
Can I say something on that?
Yeah, please.
So when we sat that whole day waiting for a motto, it was about education. And so when we had the thing of screw the system, it was very much about the cannot do, and all of the administration and all of that stuff and the pressure, and you have to get exams and you have to do all of the subjects and you have to be A at everything. That's what we were referring to as the system. And serve the people, help the people to reach their potential. That was what that motto was.
And enjoy learning.
Was about.
Yeah.
Is to make what those children are interested in exciting. Help them open the doors to the next step in their lives. That's real education.
Yeah.
The system fails them.
Sometimes.
A lot of the time.
Doesn't the end of this chapter talk about that specifically?
What does it say?
How there's a place for basically maybe not overthrowing, but rebelling against systems that no longer serve, that have become religious, stagnant, maybe oppressive. They've taken their knowledge and become power hungry. And that then there's a balance there, right? He talks exactly about that.
Yeah. Learning
the balance.
Is that
I think the example of the hero doing that often, he talks about Harry Potter and Jesus.
Yeah.
They both essentially screw the systems, right? They break the rules and they're seen as heroic. So how do we marry those two ideas? But I think the way he says it is, if the end result of breaking the rule enforces what the rule was meant to preserve, it's worthwhile.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you guys know more about the Bible, but he talks a lot about Jesus saying something about not observing the Sabbath to help someone.
Yes.
Right? Do you want to expand on that a little bit?
Well, he said that the Sabbath was made for man and not man for the Sabbath. That the religious order of the day had got it the wrong way around. The Sabbath was supposed to help people. God didn't need to rest on the seventh day. He set it as a pattern so that people could have a day off and rest. And what had happened by the time that rule had been worked out in Jesus's day, it was like, this is a horrible day because I can't do anything. I can't help people. I can't fix things. I can't leave my house. I can't, a bit like COVID, you were stuck around all these rules and regulations to preserve the Sabbath. And Jesus was saying, that's not the point of the Sabbath. The Sabbath is for rest. Get away from it all, to enjoy life, to to contemplate what you've got and where you're going. And you completely messed up what it's about with all these stupid rules that have squashed the Sabbath to something that is an overlord rather than a servant to man. It's an overlord to man. It's completely upside down.
Mm.
I like what Jordan Peterson says about Jesus at the end. He says, Jesus was a little bit mischievous when he said, I'm the Lord of the Sabbath. And I thought, oh, that's kind of what, if you're going to try and challenge the rules and stuff, you need to be a bit mischievous. Yeah.
But they even penalized him for doing good on the Sabbath, for bringing blessing on the Sabbath. It's like we are so religious and dead and stagnant about this that you can't even you bring a blessing on this day that is supposed to be a blessing. It actually has become a curse.
Yeah.
It's totally backwards.
So serve the people and screw that system. Because we're going back to the original purpose.
Yeah.
To educate is where we started. Or to bless if we're talking about Sabbath.
Yeah, I think we always talk about educate to draw out information. So the school system's purpose was to educate, but they got in their own way by observing all these rules, and then they ended up turning it on its head and putting information in rather than drawing it out.
Really good, Jada. Yeah.
And that was, so that's one of the main things I wanted to tie in was like, when is it not casually denigrating the system? When is it purposefully denigrating the system? Changing, adapting the system. And I think all of us at that stage when we came up with that motto had been in schooling or tuition for a good amount of years, maybe up to 10 years each. So it wasn't like we looked from the outside, or we were a school kid saying, school sucks, I want to change this, and not having anything to back it up. I mean, we put our time in, and we weren't going off our own minds. Like we were drawing from older ideas than the modern day schooling system as it was. So that was one of the main things I wanted to discuss with you guys, because it relates so closely to what we do as a family. So those are my main points. Are there any other things that you guys found in that first chapter? I know it's quite dense. I think he's laying a foundation for the rest of the book. But were there any other like little nuggets in there that you thought were?
Well, something that he said, but not directly, was that we get our social cues from outside of us. We outsource our sanity, as it were. We see what's right and wrong. And I think, especially when you're younger, it's so important who you choose as your friends. I think it's the Bible that says bad company corrupts good morals. If you want proper social cues and sort of clues about how to act, you better be around people that know how to act. You know what I mean? If you're just hanging out with the downbeat, druggy, and you can pretty much do anything. You know what I mean? There's no honor or information that's going to help you as a person if you're hanging around with the wrong people.
I think it's Proverbs 3:23 that says you are the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Amen, brother. Amen.
Amen.
I was thinking that as well when I read some of that. Surely it matters who you hang out with.
Yeah.
Surely it can't be just anyone, because in that case, you'd be better just to hang out with your family.
Yeah, I mean,
as long as your family's decent.
In criminal societies, I mean, there are very poor people and they turn to crime. The child will not get punished for stealing something, but he would get punished if he got caught stealing something. That's their social cue.
Yeah.
How do you become a good member of society if that is your information about how to act?
Yeah.
So who you pick to model or to be friends with, or it's so important if you're going to be useful.
Yeah, that's good. I like that.
Was the way that he addressed some very real problems that have been going on in the last 5-10 years, where there's this seemingly climactic clash between the left and the right, particularly in America, but we're all Americanized to some degree. It really does affect the rest of the world. And because the left is wanting to rip down and change and just disregard, on the extreme at least, disregard history and the reason why some of these institutions exist. And the right seems to be doubling down on these institutions. And some of them are very dogmatic and don't want to change at all. And you will only take my guns from my cold dead hands type thinking, that it feels like there's a blow coming between those two. I mean, it's happening every day on Twitter, but it could become even more real than that. And the way that Peterson handles it and talks about the balance between he's mentioning the left and the right in that context, but the balance between the creative and the more consistent, where you've got hierarchies and there's rules that you obey and all of that. And I thought that was very delicately handled, although being miscommunicated and taken out of context. I thought the way he did that wasn't left or right. It was honoring the need for both of these sides of the spectrum in order for positive change to happen going forward. And I felt like he dealt with it at a very micro level and then brought it all the way up to the top, where he talked about working with people and what a new manager is like sometimes and how they use their power incorrectly. And he talked about using power and that power isn't bad, but some bad people do bad things. And one of the things he referenced there that I thought was clever was most young people who get a bit of power actually really want to do well, and they want to impress their colleagues, and they want to manage well, and they want people to like them. And then he brought it up to the political spectrums and some of the stuff that's happening in the world at the moment. And I thought that was so expertly handled. I was very impressed. Obviously, someone with an agenda to poke holes in what he's saying will find an angle they can beat him with. But I thought it was a very balanced, studious view that I think would help people, even if they have a completely different political ideology than what they think Peterson has. I think it would be incredibly helpful for both sides of the spectrum.
I agree. It's very good.
I think that's what I was going to say, Sean, is that in the situation that we've got going, we've got a lot of people who want to tear down the hierarchy. And he tackles that and he says, you've got to think of a hierarchy, not of it just authority, but that authority comes, what does he say? He says to adopt authority is to learn that power requires concern and consequence.
Yeah.
So you're not going to have the authority unless you learn how to have concern and consequence. And it's through ability that people actually, he says, they incorrectly say that people like force you to do things. But he says a lot of authority is actually people are willing to follow you because they see that you're competent and you're able and you're concerning. Yeah. And I think that's such a healthy way. I mean, I can't speak for every hierarchy, but that's a healthy way to look at hierarchies and see that there's value in it because it's being built, that people trust them. There's a safe place to rely on.
Well, that's the ideal of the hierarchy, right? That it's a meritocracy rather than nepotism or something else.
Yeah. So
in an ideal situation, that's how the hierarchy should work. And it doesn't become stagnant and solid, and it doesn't devolve into chaos. That's how hierarchy should work. I think that's a big part of the chapter.
Why their hierarchy exists.
Yeah. And I think how that applies to especially American politics. You're right, Sean. It's very delicately put. It's a good framework to go forward in any sort of political realm, how to look at it. We actually need both spectrums of people. And even in the micro that we were talking about before, in family, you need all types of people. But you've got to have that common aim, you know? So yeah, unless there's anything anyone else specifically wants to bring up, I think that's a good amount for the first chapter. And if you guys are keen, we'll do the next chapter next week.
So should we encourage people who are watching this podcast, if you can get a copy of Jordan Peterson, links in description. And
Whaley, for check out.
Read the first and second chapter, and by next week you'll be on the same page as us, literally, and we'll be able to discuss it wider and make sure that you comment below what you think about the book. Do you like it? Do you not like it?
Yeah, if you have read the second chapter, have you got any good points? Like, that would be nice to have in the comments. Yeah. We could discuss.
Ask some questions.
Well, hard questions would be fun as well, yeah.
We didn't pick any holes in the book. Maybe we should. kind of agreed with the first chapter though.
Hard to pick holes in Guru Jordan's book.
It's true.
He's thought pretty long and hard about it.
Let's see holy name.
So, Dave, can you close and pray for us?
In the name
His
of
chief
Jordan,
managed.
yes.
All right.
GG.
GG. We'll see you guys next week.
Well done, James.
Everyone, bye-bye.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.